On August 17th, 2002, Justin and his wife April were celebrating their third wedding anniversary. They had dinner at a restaurant and then decided to take a walk along the beach. It was late, the atmosphere was calm, and they were the only ones on the shore. The couple was enjoying their time, strolling under the moonlight in what seemed like a perfect romantic evening, but suddenly their dreamy romantic night turned into a horrifying nightmare. Someone ambushed them and opened fire. What exactly happened that night and why were they targeted? The case was baffling and highly complex with no concrete evidence pointing to the perpetrator. Before we continue, don't forget to hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and let's dive into today's case. The story began on the evening of August 17th, 2002 in Jacksonville, Florida. That night, a driver heading toward the beach noticed a car stopped at an intersection with its lights still on. Concerned, he decided to park behind the vehicle to check if the driver needed assistance. As he approached the car, he was shocked to find that the driver appeared injured with blood on his clothes. The man quickly asked what had happened, and the driver responded that someone had shot him. Acting quickly, the Good Samaritan drove the injured man to the hospital. There, he identified himself as Justin Barber. Before receiving any treatment, Justin urgently informed the hospital staff that his wife, April, had also been shot and was still back at the beach. Emergency responders and the police rushed to the location Justin described, where they found April. Tragically, she was already dead, having been shot once in the left cheek. But what exactly had happened that night? Why were the couple attacked? April was 27 years old, and in her childhood she had won the title of Little Miss Beauty. At 17, she suffered a major loss when her mother passed away from cancer. Deeply affected, April took on the responsibility of caring for her younger brother and sister. Her mother's death inspired her to pursue a career in medicine, eventually becoming a radiologist specializing in oncology. During her time in college, April met Justin. The two quickly became close friends. Justin was a smart, charming young man studying business administration. After just 10 months of dating, they got married in 1999. Their wedding and honeymoon in the Bahamas were beautiful, filled with joy and love. Ironically, April's life began and ended near the sea. After the police located Justin at the hospital, they prepared to question him, hoping he might have information to aid their investigation. But first, they had to deliver the heartbreaking news of April's death. Justin was devastated. Justin himself had been shot 4 times, in his left shoulder, left hand, near his neck, and his chest. The fact that he survived such injuries was nothing short of miraculous. When speaking to investigators, Justin recounted that he and April were out celebrating their 3rd wedding anniversary. They had dinner at a restaurant where they enjoyed drinks and had a wonderful time. Justin admitted he drank heavily and was quite intoxicated by the time they left. After dinner, they decided to take a walk along the beach during sunset. They strolled along the shore until darkness fell. But as the evening grew darker, tragedy struck. Justin recounted to investigators that when the attack occurred, the beach was deserted and only he and April were there. While they were walking, April suddenly noticed someone emerging from behind the trees. The figure, with their face covered, began yelling at them, demanding their money. Although the attacker said something specific, Justin couldn't make out the words. However, April responded to the man. At that moment, the attacker raised a gun. Justin instinctively stepped between the man and his wife. A shot rang out, and Justin immediately tried to wrestle the gunman. A struggle ensued, and the assailant fired 2 more shots until the gun was out of bullets. During the commotion, Justin lost consciousness. When he came to, Justin found himself alone on the beach. The attacker had vanished, and April was nowhere in sight. He began calling out for her and walking along the shore until he found her lying near the water. As he approached, he realized she had been shot in the face. Justin tried to carry April back to their car, but quickly realized he couldn't manage it due to his own injuries. He had been shot multiple times. Unable to continue carrying her, he attempted to drag her across the sand. However, his strength gave out, and he had to leave her behind while he sought help. Justin made his way to the road, desperately trying to flag down passing cars, but none stopped. Realizing he wouldn't get help that way, he decided to drive his own car. Unfortunately, he had forgotten his phone at home that day. He drove nearly 16 kilometers until he reached a traffic light where someone finally stopped to assist him. When paramedics arrived, Justin insisted they rush to save April, who was still on the beach. Investigators began piecing together the events of that night. Witnesses reported seeing another car parked at the beach's parking lot besides Justin's vehicle. The second car drove off shortly after Justin's car left, leading investigators to suspect it belonged to the attacker. The presence of another car suggested that the assailant might have been lying in wait for the right moment to strike, or could have followed Justin and April from the restaurant to the beach. Justin told investigators that strange things had been happening to April in the weeks leading up to the incident. For instance, her car window was smashed in an attempted theft, and just 3 weeks before the shooting, her house was broken into. These events made detectives suspect that someone might have been targeting April, possibly stalking her movements. Witnesses gave a vague description of the car they saw at the beach parking lot, but it wasn't enough to make any solid leads. Meanwhile, investigators began speaking to April's friends and family to learn more about her life in the weeks before her death. Although Justin claimed his relationship with April was great, her closest friend revealed a different story. She described Justin as far from the perfect husband and mentioned there had been conflicts between the couple. After April's mother passed away, she took on the responsibility of raising her younger siblings. At the beginning of their relationship, Justin had been supportive of April's role in their lives. However, tensions arose when April insisted her siblings move in with them. Justin was unhappy with this arrangement and felt it was too much responsibility, which marked the beginning of their marital problems. In 2001, Justin landed a job in Jacksonville, a different city from where April was living and working in the oncology department in Georgia. While Justin settled into a new apartment in a nice neighborhood, April stayed behind. The couple met on weekends, but it was mostly April who traveled to see Justin. This arrangement was exhausting for her, but convenient for Justin as it spared him any extra responsibility. During one of her visits to Justin's apartment, April found an earring in the bedroom, an earring that didn't belong to her. Suspicious, she started investigating and discovered that Justin had been playing tennis with a woman named Shannon Kennedy. Shannon worked at a car rental company that collaborated with Justin's firm. This revelation raised an obvious question. Could Justin's relationship with Shannon be linked to the crime? Investigators asked Justin to accompany them to the crime scene and recount everything that had happened that night in minute detail. Justin obliged, walking them through the events again. He reiterated that after being shot, he briefly lost consciousness. When he regained awareness, he ran along the shore searching for April until he found her lying face down in the water. Justin said he tried to carry her but couldn't due to his injuries. Instead, he dragged her across the sand. However, his strength gave out, and he left her there to seek help. As Justin recounted the events, he appeared emotional, crying and rubbing his face. But the investigators noticed something peculiar. There were no tears. Was he truly crying, or was it just an act? After revisiting the crime scene with Justin, the investigators gained no new evidence. Initially, they were sympathetic toward Justin, considering him a victim too. But as doubts about his story surfaced, especially after learning about his secret affair, their perspective shifted. They decided to call him in for questioning about his relationship with Shannon Kennedy. When asked about his marriage, Justin insisted it was great and described their union as a happy one. But when the detectives confronted him about Shannon, Justin became visibly flustered, his face turning red. He swore he had never cheated on April. The detectives then revealed that Shannon was in the next room and would soon join them to clarify things. Justin, realizing he was cornered, confessed. He admitted to having an affair with Shannon but claimed it was meaningless, a fleeting mistake. He also insisted he deeply loved his wife and attributed his infidelity to feeling lonely and depressed from living apart. Still, an affair was not concrete evidence of guilt. The case remained puzzling, with multiple possibilities. Witnesses had seen another car parked near Justin's at the beach, suggesting the attacker might have been lying in wait. Justin's description of the attacker as a tall, fair-skinned man could fit the owner of that car. Another theory was that someone had been stalking April, targeting her movements, and was potentially the same person responsible for the earlier break-ins and thefts. The mystery deepened, and investigators were left to piece together the conflicting clues. The third possibility the investigators considered was that Justin himself might have been the criminal, given that he had an affair with Shannon. Alternatively, Shannon herself could have been involved in the crime. The investigators were struggling to find a clear lead that would bring them closer to the truth. However, a small clue that forensic specialists discovered would eventually prove to be the key to solving the case. Justin had previously described the attacker as tall, broad-shouldered and armed, and despite his efforts to protect his wife, the attacker managed to shoot April. Justin himself was hit with 4 bullets. The issue, however, was that the police couldn't locate the owner of the car parked at the beach parking lot that night. They also found no physical evidence of the attacker's presence at the beach. Despite Justin's claim that April had been followed by someone in the weeks leading up to the crime, the police couldn't find any proof to support this. No evidence suggested that April had been specifically targeted before the shooting. Shannon, after admitting to her affair with Justin, insisted she had no involvement in the crime and had a strong alibi for the night of the incident. As a result, she was excluded from being a suspect. Curiously, while investigators were still piecing together the puzzle, Justin moved to another city and quickly entered a new relationship. It seemed he had moved on from his wife with remarkable speed, showing little hesitation or remorse. Months passed and the case remained unsolved, but suspicions continued to point toward Justin. On the night of the crime, he had driven 16 kilometers before reaching the hospital. During those 16 kilometers, he passed a restaurant, a pharmacy, some houses, and a gas station, but he didn't stop at any of these places. Why didn't he stop to seek help? April was struck by a single bullet in her face, while Justin took 4 bullets in his neck, shoulder, and left arm. She was unlucky to be hit in exactly the right spot, but Justin was lucky to survive despite being shot 4 times. In fact, he was out of the hospital the very next day. This raised further doubts among the investigators that Justin might be the real killer. Justin had a secret affair which made him a liar and a cheater, but this alone wasn't enough to prove he was the murderer. Investigators began searching for a logical motive. They discovered that Justin had taken out a large life insurance policy on April with a payout of $2 million in case of her death. This, combined with the fact that he had recently suffered huge financial losses from investments, further raised suspicions. As the investigation deepened, the police confiscated Justin's laptop and began to search for evidence. They found that 6 months before the crime, Justin had searched online for information on divorce laws in Florida, how to survive a gunshot wound, and what would happen if someone was shot in the chest. Just 6 months later, he had been shot in the left side of his chest. Perhaps the most peculiar discovery was that on the day April was killed, Justin had downloaded a song called Guns N' Roses. The lyrics of the song contained the line, "I used to love her, but I had to kill her." This was an odd choice of music, considering the circumstances. A forensic report on April's injuries revealed something telling. April had been shot in the cheek, and the blood from the wound flowed in one direction from her face. This indicated that she had been lying on her side after being shot, remaining in the same position without moving until emergency responders found her on the beach. She hadn't attempted to move after being shot, which suggested she had been incapacitated immediately. All these pieces of evidence painted a troubling picture, and the investigators were closing in on a chilling conclusion. In this section, the investigators started to believe that Justin was lying about the events that unfolded on the beach. He claimed that he dragged April for about 90 meters, but the blood evidence contradicted this story. The blood at the scene indicated that April never moved from the spot where she was shot. This inconsistency led the investigators to form a clearer picture of what truly happened on that night. April and Justin had dinner at a restaurant and went for a walk on the beach. However, instead of walking along the shoreline, they ventured into the water. At that moment, Justin attacked April, forcing her head underwater until she lost consciousness. After that, he pulled her out of the water, placed her on the shore, and shot her in the face with a gun. To make the situation appear as though they were attacked by a thief, Justin shot himself 4 times, carefully avoiding any critical areas. He shot himself in the shoulder, neck, upper chest, and left arm. Afterward, Justin tried to flag down a passing car for help, but when no one stopped, he decided to drive his own car for 16 kilometers. He passed open stores, gas stations, and other places where he could have asked for help, but he chose to keep driving until he reached a traffic light, hoping someone would notice him. However, these were all circumstantial pieces of evidence and assumptions, and there were no eyewitnesses, no murder weapon, and no confessions. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, in July 2004, 2 years after the crime, Justin was arrested. Prosecutors built a case based on circumstantial evidence and eventually managed to get Justin to stand trial in Florida in 2006. He was charged with first-degree murder for killing his wife. The question that arose was whether Justin had orchestrated a clever, elaborate plan to kill his wife while avoiding suspicion by shooting himself in non-critical areas. With the absence of physical evidence like the murder weapon, the case was complicated, but the prosecutor focused on Justin's affair and the fact that he had multiple extramarital relationships. It was also discovered that Justin had a large life insurance policy on April, and if she died, he would receive $2 million. Furthermore, forensic evidence indicated that Justin's version of events didn't align with the evidence they had. If he had truly dragged April for 90 meters, the blood trails would have looked different. The blood found near her face indicated that she had remained in that position after being shot. Justin's lawyer, however, argued that these were just assumptions and illogical theories, pointing out the lack of physical evidence tying Justin to the crime. The lawyer also mentioned that Justin earned a sufficient salary to pay off his debts and that his internet searches were merely out of curiosity. He also pointed out that witness testimony about a car being parked on the beach suggested that someone else may have been there. In the end, the jury was not convinced by the defense's arguments. After considering all the evidence, they found Justin guilty of first-degree murder. Initially, they intended to sentence him to death, but they offered him a chance to confess in exchange for a lighter sentence. Justin maintained his innocence throughout the trial, insisting that he had done nothing wrong. Ultimately, Justin was spared the death penalty and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case left a lasting impact, especially because April was an innocent, compassionate person who had always wanted to help others, particularly in honor of her mother's battle with illness. She had taken on the responsibility of caring for her younger siblings and made a positive impact on those around her. Her loss was felt deeply by many. Now the question remains, do you believe Justin was innocent, or were the pieces of evidence presented in court enough to convict him? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.